Yep. Okay. Yep. You're all ready. Thank you.
Good. Recording has started. So, good evening, everyone. I'm Councillor Steve Cremoyson, the chair of the forum, and I'd like to welcome everyone to this meeting of the Kings Barton Forum on Thursday, the 12th of October, and the time is 6 p.m. This meeting is being held virtually and in accordance with the council rules for virtual meetings. All councillors are reminded that although this meeting has been held remotely, we're all regarded as being present in a meeting of the council, and we should observe the normal rules of behaviour. And first of all, if I could just ask everyone present in this virtual meeting that your microphones remain muted and your camera is turned off whilst you're not addressing the meeting, as this will reduce the background noise and hopefully avoid any unintentional disturbances. And I've just myself remembered that I should turn off my mobile phone, so this is just a gentle nudge in that general direction. This meeting is live streamed from the council's YouTube channel, and the recording will also be available after the meeting. Subtitles can be switched on, and advice on how to do this is set out on our website. And members and officers, where appropriate for each item, please indicate if you wish to speak or to raise a point of order or explanation by raising your hand using the hand icon on your screen, and I'll invite you to speak at the appropriate time. Each member will be invited to speak in turn, so therefore I'd encourage all members to keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. So let's turn over to the business today. So firstly, let's just start with apologies. Nancy, if you could just run me through apologies you've received, and then I'll add in the apologies that I've received.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've had apologies from Councillor Rutter, for whom Councillor Lerney is deputising, and also apologies from Councillor Warwick.
Okay, thank you. And I've also received apologies from Councillor Todd, who I believe is on a train somewhere and not expecting to have decent connectivity. Okay, so perhaps we can move on to disclosures of interest, and I'll ask anyone present who has any disclosures to declare in relation to this evening's business as per the agenda. I see Councillor Porter has put up your hand. Councillor Porter.
Thank you. I think I have a personal non-prejudicial interest because I'm also a county councillor, and there are matters being discussed tonight, namely the buses, which are within the jurisdiction of the county council.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Interesting enough, your name is on the members list as both a city councillor and a county councillor, so it does make me wonder if we actually need to take your interest in that regard. But anyway, let's move on. Next item is chairperson's announcements.
Chairman, you have a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. I am terribly sorry, and having seen who that is, Councillor Batho. I think I know what you're going to say. So, at least I think one of the things you might say.
Just to say that I declare an interest in terms of the bus aspects, in that I'm an employee of Stagecoach. So just to make that aware to the meeting. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Batho. I should have thought that one through. I'm just going to check the screen now and see if there's any more hands up so that I don't miss that. Okay, as there's no more hands, I think we'll move on to chairperson's announcements. I have really nothing to say in that regard, other than prior to the meeting, I've been trying to work hard at trying to focus the agenda items on matters where really the Kings Barton Forum is really close to the terms of reference for the Kings Barton Forum, and that we try and move as many items that really could be dealt with through other I don't want to say forums, because that forum has a term, but I mean that forums in the generic sense are where matters could be dealt with by a parish council, a specific parish council, or a specific city council, etc., etc., so that we're not dealing with things that really are outside of our scope. So that's really what I wanted to say in that respect. Let's move on to the minutes of the last meeting. I'm hoping that members have all had a chance to review the minutes. I'm going to ask if we're all agreed. If you want to open up your mics and say agreed, or put up raise a thumbs up on the hand icon, etc., or the reaction. I think that's the way to do it. Then I can just check that we've got an agreement on that.
Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed.
Thank you all of you. Thank you. Right, there is one item on the minutes which I'm going to ask. I think I'm going to ask if Officer Steve Lincoln can refer to while we're moving on to other items in the agenda, and just perhaps in his remarks later on in the meeting, there was an action point in the last minutes in relation to the I think informal kickabout spaces, where Steve, I think you confirmed that City Council would discuss those proposals further with Carla. So maybe you can perhaps bring us up to speed in the item on the agenda, which is for you to talk at later in the meeting. Hopefully that's okay with you. Okay. Let's move on to item 5, public participation. And we have, as usual at these meetings, the Kings Barton Residents Association and the chair, Mike Slynn. I think you're going to want to talk, so I'm going to invite you to come onto the screen, open up your camera, mic, etc., and just talk to us. And I will also comment that Mike has provided a report from the Kings Barton Residents Association, which was on the portal and which I circulated to all members. Probably late last night was the revised version, so hopefully you've had a chance to read it, and if you haven't, you can read it as we go, and Mike will talk to it, I'm sure. So over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you perfectly, Mike, so I hope, unless anyone else declares otherwise, that we have full high fidelity.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Fine. So,
Mr. Slynn, terribly sorry, can I interrupt you? I've just had a message from Mr. Griffin Thorne, who said he hasn't had a link to get to the meeting. So could Dancy perhaps arrange that while you're talking, and then he'll be here in good time. Do you mind? Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Okay. Nancy, do you want to cut in? Because I know I
have sent him a couple, but I will try again. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what's going on there, but I will try again.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Councillor Porter, for letting us know that. And sorry, Mike, hopefully we can give the floor back to you.
Thank you very much. Fine. So the first point was really about the summer fete for our residents. We had over 300 residents when we met on Saturday, the 9th of July. And we're still there? Yeah, Saturday, 9th of July. And the next thing we're aiming to do is a further site tidy up day. And the parish council helps us with the materials for that. The next point I wanted to make, which is in the report, is about pedestrian and cycle movement on Andover Road between Kings Barton and the city centre. It's really a query as to where we are with that. We have put forward some proposals. We haven't heard back on those proposals. Perhaps we could be informed what the plans are. I know there's some money available, so if you could let us know, that would be good. Thank you. The third point is about the state of the roads in 1B, including Winchester Avenue. I'm sure anybody who's been up there will have noticed that the state of the roads is poor. We've now heard, thankfully, from Carla that the wearing course for the estate roads is going to be provided, but we haven't heard anything about the main Winchester Avenue itself, which doesn't have a wearing course on it and is very difficult for anybody to navigate. So some help on that would be accepted from you. Fourth point is about Naomi Arnold. It's more than 6 months now since Naomi Arnold, who was our City Council Community Development and Liaison Officer, left. We're very much hoping we're going to have a replacement soon, so some advice from City Council on that will be, again, well received. Fifth point is about the phase 2 proposals provided by Carla for the landscaping and management plan. And the main issue really for us is, well, who's going to be responsible for the ongoing financial commitments to the activity mandated in that document? So there's a 5-year commitment, and we residents don't have any money, so I hope somebody else has got some money to meet that obligation. So some information on that would be useful. And then finally, this is really a repeat of a request we made earlier. It would be very helpful to us if we could have a regular report at this meeting, or even between meetings, identifying the update on progress on Section 106 and Section 278 contributions. Not only how much is due, but also how much has been received by the city and county councils, and how much has been spent, and what it has been spent on. Can we please repeat that request and ask somebody in the city and somebody in the county council through the city council to provide that information? Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Mike. If you suddenly, just so you're all aware, if you suddenly see my screen go blank and me muted, it's probably because, as you may be able to tell, I've got the end of a really bad cold, and I will try not to cough and splutter in full view of you all. So it may take me a couple of seconds to come back to you. So to your points here that you've raised, Mike, I think we're going to try and take. Let's just deal with the ones which are straightforward. So I know that our officer Robert Green is going to comment on your point, which I got it listed as 8, which is in the original report around the Winchester City Council officer. So he's going to cover that later on in the meeting. I think he's also going to cover off the S106 items. I think they're not all contributions. In some cases they're contributions, so he's going to cover off that. We may not be able to give you all the specific information that you've asked for, but we will at least be able to say whether things have been done or not done. So that's going to be covered. I think we can ask Carla to perhaps talk to your point about the state of the road. So I think we've got Viv still here. Hopefully Viv will be able to at least talk to that subject and give some idea of where things are in terms of their plans, agreement with the county council, and also their plans in terms of how they roll things out, to give some expectation setting. Item number, I'm jumping around here a bit, but the item in relation to the pedestrian and cycle movements on Andover Road, I think this is a very interesting subject. It's one that I think we'll perhaps come back to later on, but I think we'd probably like to ask our City Council officers, Rob Green here, to take that away and see what can be brought back to this meeting, perhaps for next time. Probably, I think, from the County Council, but maybe we can cover that again later on, Rob, as to what you can and can't do in that regard, and whether you need input from Carla to be able to do that. So I've covered off that item. With respect to the Phase B, 2B proposals, including landscaping and the management plan, I think this gets into the long-term plans for the management of the estate. Perhaps we can ask Carla perhaps Viv, you can talk to that a little bit in your section. But I think in the long run, I think we probably all as a forum need to understand sort of the relationship between, you know, the specifics about what parts will be managed by this Barton Farm Management Company, and then hence what bits are parish council, what bits are city council, what bits are county council, because as councillors often we get asked a load of questions around open spaces or roads or whatever, and one of the first challenges is trying to figure out who on earth is actually responsible, which authority is usually the default, and many residents will say, oh, the council is responsible, and that doesn't usually help, because we then got 3 councils to narrow it down down between, and in this case we may even have effectively this management company. So so that I think is perhaps we can get a little bit of input from Carla as to what the plan is there, but also I guess when this is actually going to become relevant to us all, and perhaps we can also ask Steve Lincoln to comment on that as well. Hopefully I haven't delegated that to too many people. So okay, so I think we hopefully can have all that covered, and if we can then move on to update from Hampshire County Council on the bus service, and I'm hoping that he's going to say, yes, you've managed to get hold of Mike.
Unfortunately not. We're having some technical difficulties. We sent him the invite in a number of ways, but we don't seem to be getting through. So I think Robert Green's going to try and get hold of him, but yeah, we're not having any luck as yet, I'm afraid. Okay,
well that's a shame. So let's park that one for a little bit, and hopefully I'm very tempted to say let's park the bus for a minute, but that brings up all sorts of other connotations. So let's move on to item 7 on the agenda, and Viv, you having just asked you to comment on other things on several matters, I'm going to now throw the ball over to you, Viv, and hopefully you've had a chance to think about those items. Viv, are you able to join us?
You'll probably get a double act from myself and Ian as usual.
Hello, Ian.
And we can cover off both appropriate points as and when. And I'll pass the buck immediately to Ian. Ian will comment first on roads, and I can come on to some of the landscape issues that Mike mentioned. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Just on the roads in phase 1B, I've already discussed with the KBRA regarding the estate roads, and Mike alluded to that in his little chat there, regarding the technical approval of the Winchester Avenue, new Winchester Avenue. Again, I've already advised the KBRA of the situation, but just for this meeting, that we're very close to technical approval on the section in 1A, and once we've got the principles agreed for the Winchester Avenue in 1A, then it applies the same principles to 1B, so that would follow on shortly thereafter. So other than that, I can't give an exact time scale. We're working closely with Hampshire County Council to get that through. Things have progressed well in recent months, so I would suggest that the 1A approval is very close to being done, with 1B to follow very quickly thereafter. So I think that would be the update on the roads.
Okay, perhaps if we could, before we move on to the open spaces and areas, Viv, that you said you were going to talk about, perhaps if I could just open it up to the floor for members to ask questions on what Ian Curry has just updated us in respect to the roads. Members, have you got any questions on this? Not seeing any hands. I'm going to throw a question in while we wait for that. So, Ian, I understand all that, and I think, you know, this negotiation, I guess, between yourselves and the county council probably covers a lot more things than we realise, and would would necessarily want to get into in a forum. So I can understand it's probably, you know, it takes a long time. But are there, once that technical approval, an agreement has been reached, do you have any, if you like, practical project management of the development factors that will cause you to say, hang on a minute, yeah, we've got this, but we need to, like, I'll be very specific, but there might be other factors. Yep. You've got the whole of that village centre to build out with, you know, big buildings and stuff like that. Yep. I can imagine there's going to be some pretty chunky machinery coming in and out, and materials coming in and out. Is that a factor in your planning for when that whole route can be given a top surface? You know, not wanting to put in a brand new surface and then churn it all up with huge machinery.
Yeah, I think we need to just, and I totally understand your question, Steve, and I think we just need to get the terminology right. So,
yeah,
so
sure.
so the reality is that we don't drive diggers and the like across metalled road surfaces, because that won't be appropriate. It's no different from bringing in a machine through the public highway network onto the site. It then goes onto the site, doesn't come off the site until it's done the work on the site, and then it will go back onto the low loader to get off the site. So we're not tracking back and forth across where roads have got wearing course on. So just to clarify that issue. But the reality is that through the process of building the road, you always leave the wearing course right till the last minute, and this is exactly what I was explained to the KBRA, is that nobody will want a road surface that has got lots of scars through it, where we've had to do some drain remedials or lamppost remedials or curb remedials. So we get the majority of the works done and dusted, and then the correct process is to get technical approval. We build the road, we then go through all the remedials, and then we apply the wearing course right at the end, and then we get it finally signed off, and then it goes through to adoption. So I don't know whether that sort of answers your question.
Yeah, it does. It says to me, you've qualified.
There's a process, and we won't leave the roads to be unsafe. That's and at phase 1B we are aware that there were some potholes forming, and then we sorted that out. So it's not unsafe. It's not particularly pretty, to be fair, but we haven't got the wearing course. There's no point putting the wearing course on Winchester Avenue because we haven't yet got technical approval, but we've now agreed that we've got everything sorted pretty much on the estate roads. So we've given a time scale as to when those will be done. So that part will be all finished. So
great, thank you. Okay, and I've got two hands up. So I've got Councillor Batho, Councillor Porter have got questions for you. Sorry, Councillor Batho. Sorry, I should have called you in.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. My question is, in terms of accommodating the process with Hampshire County Council, are you anticipating that there'll be any need to make changes to the actual road layout and to the structure that's already been put down, or is it a case of just putting the final course on the actual layout that's already sort of present in the development?
Are you talking about the estate roads on 1B or the Winchester Avenue? Which one are you talking about, or both?
Well, both. What I'm saying is are there any changes that you're needing to being required to make to the layout to accommodate the approval that you're getting from Hampshire County Council, or have you effectively got approval, from what you understand at the moment, for the layout that's currently in existence, and it'll be a case of the chair was just asking about putting the final course on what is there, sort of at the moment?
Okay, so in regard to phase 1B estate roads, in essence, there's no change to the layout. It is remedials. There'll be a few tweaks with some lamp columns, maybe some gully movements or something like that. So it's nothing significant. So that's why we're pretty confident we'll know exactly what those changes are in the next week or so, and then we'll get on with those, and then it's resurfacing. So that's very, very minor, what we would normally expect. With Winchester Avenue in phase 1B, there will be some no changes to the road alignment, but there will be some changes to the road finish and the tabletop design and the like. So as an example, there were some granite sets that were put in the centre of the road. They are no longer acceptable for Hampshire, so they'll be coming out, and there'll be a different arrangement there. So that's why the Winchester Avenue is tagging behind, if you like, the estate roads. So it's important that we get the estate roads done first. The Winchester Avenue isn't dangerous. It's got some, arguably, because the speed humps, if you like, the tabletops are a little bit steeper than they would normally be when the road has had its final wearing course. Arguably, it's a good speed deterrent for people. So actually it's probably doing a positive job in that respect. So does that answer your question?
Yes. I was just wondering if, because there has been some discussion about the design of the road being sort of initially for 20 miles an hour. I'm just wondering, is it essentially still remaining as a 20 mile an hour designed road? However, the speed limit might be, as part of this, raised to a higher speed.
No, it's and Viv, you can step in here as well, that it is actually designed to a 30 mile an hour road. That's what the traffic regulation order will say. It's a 30 mile an hour road. It's not a 20 mile an hour road, but there are some elements within it that will significantly reduce the speed. So if the speed needs to be reduced down to 20, then that's a Hampshire County Council process. There'll be a traffic regulation order process to bring it down to 20, but currently it is a 30.
Okay. Right.
Thank you.
Councillor Bathrow, if you could just put your hand down, I'll invite Councillor Porter to join. And before I do that, Jackie, just to welcome Mike Griffin-Thorne. I am very relieved to see, Mike, you have joined us. If you could just confirm that by opening your mic and just letting us know you're here.
Yes, I'm here. Apologies brilliant. For that this evening.
Okay, that's a relief. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Jackie.
Thank you. And actually, thank you very much, Ian. I think you've just answered the question I was going to ask, really, which was, I accept that it hasn't got a top course yet, but there are some quite challenging lumps and bumps for people that if they're cycling or if they're using a car that's got a lower base, and they do come down, it does come down at certain points quite quickly. So you mentioned about effectively there's the tables creating quite a sharp spot.
Yeah.
Has any consideration been given to just making those less dramatic whilst this pre-top course stage is ongoing?
It can certainly be done, but I think, and I'm happy if there's somebody saying to me that it's a problem, very happy to deal with it. But certainly my understanding was that it's actually quite a good deterrent.
It's a very good deterrent.
The irony is that we've been asked to, assist with putting in some, speed restriction signage because people are driving too fast, and by lowering the gradient of those speed humps would actually exacerbate that problem. So but I'm happy, Jackie, to have a look into it. If you're aware of particular issue or particular speed hump, please do let me know and we can sort it out. No problem.
I'm responding to residents on that one, but I think it's useful to know that. Thank you. But I think they'd love them in Winnell. So thank you. It's just a different place, isn't it? Different place, different situation. But I'll check again with the community.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think in a way, Ian, it kind of highlights our problem as councillors in that we represent people at both extremes of that. People who want really big pumps that really slow people down, and also people who've got low set cars with spoilers at the front who don't want them damaged. Yeah. And that's why, in a way, it's jolly good that Hampshire Highways are in general the people who have to kind of work out the policy that kind of finds that compromise, and I guess that's the problem you're in at the moment, is you can't finish it off that would actually deliver it to that point until you get through the process you're going through. Okay, right. Not seeing any more questions on that subject, so Viv, can we do you want to have the ball thrown at you so that you can perhaps talk about some of the landscaping issues that have been raised, and anything else, frankly, that was on your agenda to bring us up to speed with?
Yeah, I think thanks very much, Chair. I think at this stage I'll only just comment on the question that Mike raised in relation to the landscape management and maintenance plan that was submitted as part of the Phase 2B application. Yep. That is a document which is required under the outline planning permission to be submitted with every reserve matters application. It isn't actually needed for the application per se, but we have submitted it with 2B. It would be needed for a discharge of a planning condition usually. It's condition 10 as part of the outline planning permission, which requires the 5-year or a document which should be produced, which demonstrates measures to be taken to ensure that trees and species and plants that are put in are replaced if they die within a 5-year period of them going in. Now that document, I think Mike asked the question about what that document would be used for. That document will be used, could be used by Carla. It could be used by, it'll be given to our landscape contractors when they're putting the landscape in. It could then be used in the future by Winchester City Council. It could be used by Headbourne Worthy Parish Council. It could be used by Hampshire if they were taking open spaces, and ultimately be used by our management company when they're looking after the landscape spaces prior to the formal handover to parish councils and the city council. So it's I suppose a relatively generic document which covers a lot of the expectations for how the landscape should be looked after in that first 5-year period. And the reason for submitting it now was purely that it's good practice to submit it with the reserve matters, but ultimately it's only a requirement of the planning condition once we get approval for that particular phase. I hope that answers the question in terms of its future use and what the document's used for. Okay, I think if my memory is working right, I think the concerns there were around who funds. So some of it, I guess, covers pieces which will be handed over to a local authority without getting specific. Could well be Headbourne Worthy Parish Council is the default at the moment. Not likely to be City Council for reasons we've discussed before. But then there's parts which I think, in a generic sense, as I understand it, will be the responsibility of I'd assumed Castleford until this information came to me, and I see, okay, there's now a Barton Farm management company. So I guess, and this is what a question where I wonder when's the most appropriate time for us to all understand this, because as I mean, people who live there need to understand it, but also as councillors, most of the people who are on this call are either, we have a lot of residents either in our ward, and with the boundary between the Worthies and St Barnabas, there's 6 councillors there who all will need to understand, okay, what is the responsibility of that piece, literally that little piece of land? Is that a parish? Is that a Barton Farm management company? At what point do we find out and get a kind of the map out where we can say, okay, we can have that conversation and we have the contact names in these places? Is that when's the right time for that? And maybe after you've answered, maybe I'll call in Steve Lincoln, who may be thinking about this from the point of view of the City Council's role in helping to facilitate that. Sorry, I hope that was clear enough. No, that's very, very clear, Chair, and I think I understand the question. A lot of that work was done very much up front in terms of there was always an expectation that the significant areas of open space within Kings Barton were going to somebody else, and I say that somebody else was I think at one point anticipated to be the City Council, and clearly that's now going to Headbourne Worthy Parish Council. So it is those initial landscape plans for the delivery of the significant chunks of open space were always anticipated to go to a third party, whether it be Headbourne or the city, as I say. So those initial plans at wider master plan stage were produced, and I think they sat within the document, which is one we refer to as the LOST document, the Landscape and Open Space Strategy document, produced initially by Fabric. But subsequently, as we develop each reserve matters application, we get into the greater detail and extent of landscaping within those phases. More detailed plans, effectively conveyance plans, are there in the public realm, which identify very, very clearly in probably very block colour what remains the the responsibility of the management company, and what remains what will be handed over to Winchester and Headbourne in the future. I mean, in very, very simple terms, most of the open space has always been anticipated being passed on. It's only the smaller areas of incremental, I call it smaller incremental open spaces, which would remain the company of our management company. I'm thinking, for example, there's smaller areas of open space or a little edge of a swale, which might be our management company, but it opens out into a big suds attenuation base, and that was anticipated or has been handed over to the wider third party. So all those plans are in the public realm, or can be arranged to be sent over. We've got a very, very clear set of conveyance plans which show what is our responsibility, what is City Council or Headbourne Worthy's responsibility, or what is management company.
Right. And I'm sorry to other members for hogging this, using my chairman's hogging the questions, but just to make sure we bottom that one out. Part of Mike's question was around who will pay for that ongoing commitment. And if there's a management company, in my experience, if there's a management company that kind of is responsible for certain parts, there needs to be funding for it. And if there's no funding, once the initial funding runs out, it's by default residents, I guess. But how does that work? And maybe that's a whole bigger conversation that we need to have another time. But how does that work? What are there contractual obligations, or is it kind of voluntary? Sorry, I'm asking perhaps dumb questions.
No, I think, and if I give the wrong answer here, I'm sure someone will jump in, and Ian might wrap me on the knuckles if I get this wrong. But essentially, it's the service charge through the residents to the management company, which pays for the upkeep of the open spaces that are incidental open spaces that will be managed and maintained by the management company. The wider pieces, once handed over to Winchester or parish councils, will ultimately be looked after by those parish councils.
Right. Okay. And Steve has come on the screen, which says to me he wants to make a contribution. So, Steve, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Chair. Only a very small contribution, and as much because you invited me to earlier. But I mean, mainly I'd just endorse everything that Viv's just said. So I suppose the only thing I was going to add in terms of, I think there was sort of reference earlier to sort of everybody needing to know which bit of open space is managed by who. I think this is a situation that's common in all of our communities all over the district, and in most communities there'll be bits of open space that are loaned by the City Council. There'll be bits often along the road verges that are looked after by Hampshire, and there are bits that are looked after by parishes. So I think it wouldn't be an uncommon situation at all. And to a degree, I think the onus probably sits on us, those bodies as the respective landowners. We'll often get calls at the City Council regarding a piece of land which ultimately turns out not to be ours, so we'll just refer that on to the County Council or somebody else to deal with. So in some ways I think it's possibly not something that we need to worry too much about, every resident needing to know which bit of open space. I think it'll be beholden on all of us as agencies sort of maintaining areas in that space, that if someone contacts us about a bit of land, we'll make sure that the right person gets to know about it and gets to deal with it. So we're all a first point of contact in regards to land at Kings Barton, and we'll make sure that the right people get to deal with it. But I think it is important, and as much as we want to try and be as consistent as possible as we can in terms of the approach and who looks after the land, but it is obviously important that the right people who are best placed to look after the right bits of land and any sort of legislation and bits that go with it. So as much as we'd like sort of one body to be looking after everything, there will be certain circumstances where it's best done by somebody else because they're best placed to do that. So
okay, thanks, Stephen. If I could just ask you one question while keep this thread going. What in timing wise, we're at the very early stages of that handover from, hopefully we're going to be able to report on 1B playground and so on later. So it's like the first thing transferred. So, and there's going to be more coming through regularly. So it's a constant, it's going to be constant change over however long it takes. At what point do you think it's worth actually kind of laying it all out in a rather than people just learning it through experience, which is frankly how it's been for me since I became a councillor, is you just learn from experience that piece is parish and that piece is county, and sometimes both sides point at each other and say it's theirs. is there a point in time in this development where you think it would be useful to kind of say, lay it out and say, this is the intent, and in terms of how we think it's going to be, and at the moment we're at the stage where, you know, whatever the stage is, you know, where Carla still have parts of what eventually are planned to move over to the local council. Is there a point in time where you think it would be useful to have that briefing, if you like?
I'm not sure there's a fixed point in time. I think it's something, you know, if it's something that members would like a bit more information on, then we could certainly bring something forward. It's something I could pick up with Viv in a conversation after the meeting. Right. I suspect it might not be the most helpful thing to get down to a very granular level about individual bits of land, but you know what you've referred to already, the fact that, you know, relatively recently we've kind of reached an agreement and a principle in terms of the role of the parish council in all of this. So things will have changed since the original lost document was set out, and we could certainly bring something back to the forum for a future meeting, talking about sort of different types of open space, maybe in their sort of generality, in terms of which types of open space are likely to sit where, rather than getting down to very specific bits of land. But we could certainly update on that, and I mean it will continue to change a bit, like Viv said as well. You know, the detail of each phase comes forward, and some of the detail as it plays out will change things slightly in terms of what we thought and how it eventually ends up. But we could certainly look to a future meeting and bring something back that just updates people on the current thinking and how things might look.
Okay, thank you, Steve. I should have opened up the floor for people to put up their hands if they've got questions. So members, if you've got specific questions for Viv or actually Steve on this particular matter, I know Steve's going to come back in later. So any questions? Okay, looks like you've got off the hook. And I guess while we're still on the on your Carla section, Viv or Ian, are there any other things you'd come to the meeting planning to brief us on, rather than what I've dragged? Oh, we've just got a question coming in from Councillor Porter. But if there are things you were planning to brief us on, maybe, you know, good time to brief us on it now. So Jackie, do you want to come in and ask the question? Can't hear you at the moment, Jackie.
Want to stop. I know, I didn't want to stop your flow.
Okay, sorry.
But I was just going to ask, do you know what the success or how the car share vehicle's going? Do we know anything about whether it's working or not?
Afraid I can't answer that.
Okay. I'm
afraid.
Perhaps you can find out for us and let us know if it's got an interest. Thank you.
Certainly. So Chair, I think you asked me just to carry on with anything that specifically Carla might want to cover. I think at the last forum, I believe I recall I shared a couple of plans on the phase 2B application, which and I confess I can't recall if it was imminently to be submitted or had been submitted by then. But regardless, we've got the phase 2B application in. I wasn't planning on necessarily sharing any particular plans on that this evening. They're obviously in the public realm, they've been submitted and they're available. If there were any questions on phase 2B this evening, I'd happily answer them. And I do have some plans at my fingertips should you want to discuss anything in particular, but I didn't think it was necessarily the forum to go through that in detail. But if there were questions on the 2B application, happy to answer them now that it's been submitted, and I think you've all been invited to comment should you wish to.
Okay, I'm just going to open the floor then, see if members, any of the members present actually have any questions in relation to those. Probably should give a couple of seconds before concluding, yes or no. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up, so I think there are no questions at this point, Viv, so thank you for just updating us on that. Okay.
That's right.
So
thank you.
If I haven't lost the plot here, I think we have covered your section, Carla, Viv and Ian. So now I think we can go back to the update from Mike Griffin-Thorne on the bus service. So Mike, if you want to open up your camera, Mike,
very much,
and join us. thanks for coming to join us. I know you've done a lot of work on this in the background. So I believe you're going to talk about initially the survey results, and then secondly some ideas I think you have got in terms of actually improved services. But I'll leave it to you to take it away. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. So I have got a set of slides, so I'm going to try and present these. Hopefully you can see them any second.
Yes, we can.
Can you see them?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So yes, there's a couple of points or a few points I'm going to touch on today. So we've got a summary of the survey results, brief summary of that, summary of the proposals that we've been thinking of moving forward, an update on where we are with those proposals, a bit of an update on some of the infrastructure across the development, and also whilst it may seem irrelevant here, the SP25 or savings for Hampshire that are predicted for April 2025, which will sort of play a bit of a part as we go into it. So I'll explain that when we get towards the end, and there'll be an opportunity towards the end as well to ask any questions. So then we run the survey, and that went we shared that with all of the residents, and a QR code went out, and there were opportunities in multiple places to be able to submit people's responses, and of that we've received 226 responses during the period that the survey was open. So that was from the 19th of June to the 31st of July, a totaling of 43 days. So that was operational. From those, we've had 60% respondents were unaware of the current Connect service. So it's quite obvious that, you know, there is a piece of work there for sure that needs to happen around any kind of publicity, so that people are aware of where we are and what we propose to do. And that's important with any of the new services that we do moving forward. So any changes we make, we need to make sure that that is very obvious. And we've got multiple channels, so we need to start utilising those. 40% that were unaware of its existence, only that were aware of its existence, only 8% actively make use of the service. So that's quite an interesting number that so few use it. 40% of respondents currently use the Stagecoach services, so that's the 86 and 85 that run along Andover Road. 19% of those were saying that they use it daily, 23% were using it weekly, and the remainder were using it a lot less frequent. Of the 60% of respondents who do not currently use the Stagecoach services, 54 selected that the times don't work for them, or that in fact they actually use their own vehicle, their own car. The main usage for both the Connect service and the local bus service was for commuting. So it was at those peak times of the day, going to schools, college, and linking with the rail network, as per the respondents. An average of 20% would like to see an improved morning operation, so between 6:30 and 8:30. Again, that's to link with the train station and to go on to the city centre, and the same average percentage would like to see an improved evening service, again from 20 to 6 in the evening through until 10 past 8. Some of the comments that we received on that was particularly around socialising and for leisure purposes. There were also some comments there around commuting as well, so the later trains coming back from London. We asked about additional stops. We've got 40% of respondents suggested that they would find additional stops to the hospital quite beneficial. I think we're aware of quite a few nursing staff that live on the development, so you know clearly that would be of benefit to them. 30% suggested they would like to see an additional stop in 1A, whilst 44% suggested they would like an additional stop in 1B. This would increase from the current arrangement of 2 stopping points. So with the Connect service, currently we've only got 2 stopping points, one in 1A and one in 1B. So that would move up to the 4 across the whole of the development. And the services would also serve all of the stops along the route to Winchester city centre. So depending on the final route of where that went, this service, whatever we propose to put forward, would stop and serve all bus stops. It would be a registered bus service. It wouldn't necessarily just be dedicated to Kings Barton residents, so anyone could use that.
Okay. Mike, can I just pause you for a second?
Yeah.
I've got Councillor Batho has put his hand up. I'm wondering if there's a reason, James, you wanted to interrupt.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Sorry, Mike. It was just a question as to whether you have any sort of breakdown of these results in terms of demographics. You particularly there say that it's used at peak times. Is there any sort of idea of what the breakdown is? That is that students going to Peter Simmons, or mind you, I suppose with the demographic of Kings Barton that might not be the case. But I just wondered if there's any details in terms of which respondents we had. And which categories of age and use those results refer to, please.
Sure, thank you for that question. No, unfortunately we don't. So we in order to keep the survey as sort of anonymous as possible, we've retracted that information. So we never asked for that at the beginning. It was only ever to keep that anonymous and not obtain that information. Now I appreciate, obviously, in this circumstance, it would be handy to have, but unfortunately, no. Getting it through the DPIA was the easiest option. Was to not get that information and not hold that information.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Perfect.
I don't know how your slide set is going to break down. If perhaps we should just, if you want to pause when you feel like you've got through a chunk of it, where you would be open to questions rather than us interrupting as you go.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
So if you can just let us know when you're pausing to, and if there are questions. And what I'd say to members is, put up your hand if there's some crisis or something that you want to alert us of, but we'll just wait for those pauses rather than putting questions in as we go. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, perfect, thank you. So we asked about a Sunday service. Would that be of benefit to people? As you can see there, 75% of respondents indicated that it would, whilst the others indicated no, it wouldn't be, or wouldn't be applicable to them. The final question we asked from respondents was about the public bus. If a public bus was available, would they, would users regularly make use of that to conduct their business? Naturally, as you'd expect, there are a high percentage selected yes, whilst the remaining indicated no, or it would be of no benefit to them. And from all of those, from the 226 responses that we received, 96 of those respondents included additional comments in their feedback. That ranged from why isn't there a bus in place already, right through to not wanting a bus at all, and pretty much everything in between. So that was quite handy for us to see that and see people's feedback. People also gave a bit of information there about what they use the services for, or what they would propose to use them for. I'll pause there for questions. I think it's a good opportunity at the end of that feedback. So if anyone has got any questions.
Okay, members. I see hands go up. I'm not seeing anything yet. So I think, Mike, you take that as a go ahead to move on to the next slide.
Lovely, thank you. So the proposals then. So yeah, the working group that we've currently got going. we've discussed the available options moving forward, and we're Hampshire. We've taken on board what residents would like to see from this service, and we would like to propose including most of those suggestions we've surveyed on. So that this does involve a significantly bigger operation than that is currently running. So it would go to a 14.5-hour operation. So it would operate from 6:30 in the morning through until around 8:30 in the evening, and that's Monday to Saturday. It'd have 2 pickups in each of the areas, so 2 in 1A and 2 pickups in 1B. It would serve the hospital, the rail station, and the city centre. And the proposal would be to use at least a minibus at the beginning. So this would allow us time to monitor usage, and the proposal would be to stretch out that funding that is available for as long as possible, because this service is naturally going to have to be made viable. It's important that we do recognise, though, that to date we've done no tendering on this type of service for this area. It's never been commissioned like this. So obviously the taxi, the Connect service was a taxi that's being used. That's significantly different. There are a lot more taxis in the area. It's a pre-bookable service, and therefore it's easier for the taxi operators to manage. What we're going into, if we look at doing minibuses and with the larger buses as well, is that we're competing with the school transport operational times as well. So those peak times are the most popular, and as you'd expect, the most expensive times for us to try and get the transport. So we really do, we're likely to have a bit of a tackle on our hands here trying to get that resolved. And I think we also need to be mindful that we're hoping to achieve the best possible outcome here. We need to be aware that there may have to be some compromises. We've got a vision. We know what that is now. What we would like to see from this. But we also have to be realistic with the current state of the market. We are still seeing a national driver shortage across the country, and that is felt from all of the transport sector, from taxis, minibuses, large buses, coaches. We are seeing that right the way through. Again, I'll just pause there if anyone wants to ask any questions.
Do we have any questions at this point? I've got Councillor Batho.
Thank you. Yes, sorry. Just again, when you did the survey, was there any question or any sort of information you gained about what the reaction would be from the residents about the use of a minibus rather than sort of using the sort of service buses or taxis that they've currently been used to? My question is just on whether there would be as much of a take up with the use of minibuses as there would be with the other services that are already existing is the question. Sure.
No, there wasn't a specific question around that. What I will say is we did receive some feedback to suggest that would be acceptable to that particular person who submitted their submission, to say that a minibus they believe would be acceptable. So no, we never unfortunately asked that exact question. I think open-mindedly we were kind of thinking bigger than a taxi, upwards of a taxi, should I say, and to be more regular, so not necessarily pre-bookable, and again it's sort of being a larger vehicle available at those times of the day without the need to book.
Okay, Councillor Batho.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Have we got any further questions at this point? I've got one from Councillor Porter. Councillor Porter. You might be muted.
That's it. No, it's just going to say, Mike, and it's really helpful work, and I'm just going to register our thanks to Kings Barton Residents Association, who promoted this whole survey, and it's really interesting. And the challenge, as you've said just now, is about finding a bus service that would actually work and be able to be running for this, because we're finding it's difficult even on our standard services to get the service that we're hoping for. One of the things that has come forward is the potential for it to go to be collecting other people along the route. So at one point there's Mount Barton Court on Andover Road, which has a good number of people that actually live there and may want to use something like this. But my question is, would that be acceptable, or is this specifically, does it have to be as part of the S106? Does it have to be just for Kings Barton residents?
Yeah, so it will be a registered bus service. Therefore, any passengers along the route can collect that bus. If we look at a Section 19 permit for this vehicle, it would have to be a bookable service again, and that's not what residents would like to see. So we have to go with a Section 22 as a minimum, or we go to the local bus. So both of those have more or less the same usage or uses that they can use that vehicle for, but they do have to be registered. So we will register that service, and therefore passengers can collect anywhere along that route. What I will say is, obviously, if it goes around Kings Barton, which is where it would start and end, if it collects and fills the vehicle to full capacity, it would then obviously travel its a normal route, and when a space becomes available, so i.e. when they drop someone off, one more space would then be available for someone to board. So it may be that passengers are not able to board further along that route.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, because we obviously would be good news if it's highly successful and very busy, but then it can be frustrating if you can't then board it. I guess, let's. I think Councillor Batho wants to come back in.
Sorry, Mike, is it possible to reiterate what the route is that's proposed for that service, please?
Yeah, so there's no exact route decided as yet. With the smaller vehicle, with the minibus, if we propose to use a minibus, it is easier to turn, so it can get to the hospital probably quite easily and drop off there. I would like to think that it will probably come through 1A, 1B, then onto 1A, or vice versa. Sorry, come along Andover Road, probably go up, turn just before the Jolly Farmer pub there, and then to get up to the hospital, coming along. Forgive me, I forget the name of the road that travels. Chilbolton, thank you. Along Chilbolton Avenue there before picking up the Romsey Road, coming back down, and then more or less following the route that all of the other buses do. So up round the station and then down into Winchester, and it will stop on the Broadway to drop and collect passengers from there.
Could it be extended out to the leisure centre, because that's an element that I think certainly from the north of Winchester is, and I'm sure Kings Barton residents will suffer this as well, that isn't then served at the moment?
Yeah, there's no reason why it couldn't. So we've done, the honest answer is we've done nothing further on that exact routing at this time. Sure. So that is still up for discussion, and once we've decided the way forward, we will then decide what is the best route. And I think with the proposals, with the options, sorry, which I'll go on to discuss in a moment, it's an ideal time to look at those, how we can best facilitate everything, and how easily we can remove or add on to what we've currently got, or what will be set up as part of the proposal.
Okay, thanks Mike, and thanks James for the questions there. Mike, I'm very conscious that you've got 5 more slides, of which maybe all 5 have content in it, and maybe it might be best just to plough through those and for members to hold their questions until the end. Otherwise, you're going to have micro scrutiny on each and every slide.
No, it's fine. Okay, I'll move on to the options then. So, one of the options that we've looked at, we've explored this in another part of the county, and it was a proposal that we were looking to take forward. And that's using our internal colleagues from Hampshire Transport Management, or HTM as they may be known. Using those, they're not for profit, so they're our own internal colleagues. So they would use a minibus. The likelihood would need to be 2 drivers for this level of service. So anything we look at, it's going to be a vehicle plus 2 drivers at minimum. So a minibus with them, the cost to operate it is going to be kept minimal because they're not for profit. Therefore, it's a lot less cost. We're just paying for the cost and that's it. It will also be more flexible for us to make changes, add to the route, remove the route, add a Sunday in. It makes that a lot easier. It will operate with no booking, so there'll be no booking required. It will just turn up at 8 o'clock and run that route and through until the evening time. And the fares that we would dictate on there would be the same as what Stagecoach charge to use their 85 or 86. So we cannot undercut that service. That service is a commercial service, and this is a supported service, and therefore the law states we cannot undercut that. So we will find out what that is, and if the fare cap remains, which we're proposing it, or is proposed to remain through until next year, next November, it will be set to the £2.50. If Stagecoach charge less than £2.50, we will meet the same price. So there will be no real competition there. The time to implement that, this particular service, will really be as long as it takes for HTM to put those plans into place. Really, a bit of route learning. I would like to think 2 to 3 months, with a view to that start in January 2024 if we're basing it on today. Option 2, and I must stress, option 1 would be our preferred option, really for those reasons that I've just stated. So option 2, if HTM are unable to do that, we will go out to the wider market. So we will put out a full tender here to see what the market is like, what feedback we get. Obviously that offers less flexibility because we start entering into a more contractual agreement with those operators, and it gets a little bit more difficult for us to make changes. Times take a little longer than usual, so we just have to play that one carefully. The cost to operate that service naturally is going to be greater. That business, they're operating a business, and therefore they will want to make profit on what's being delivered. Again, operate without any bookings, so there'll be no booking required for that. We'll just turn up at the usual time, and the fares would match the same again. It would be whatever Stagecoach is set to. Now, in the teeny tiny box, which I can barely see, I've included a little demo, and I will share these slides around. So I'll get these over to you, Chair, for them to be shared with everyone. But it really just gives us a timeline. We would have a democratic process to follow, and therefore I would, in order for me to spend that, it would need to be signed off and approved. So the very earliest that I would be looking to get this through and starting would be around the 27th of May. So that's May 2024, and that's just because of the process that we've got to follow, really. So that's the options. Has anyone got any questions at this point?
Do you want to pause for questions there, Michael?
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't know if anyone wanted to ask any questions on that.
Well, I mean, there are probably a load of questions, so I'm just wondering if the next slide might also partially address some of those questions. So
I'll jump on to
and
the
I'm
next
just
slide.
conscious of time, so
No, that's fine. Yeah, apologies.
and then people can hold their questions on this, but there's a lot in here.
Perfect.
Thanks,
I'll jump on the next slide. So where we currently are, yeah, unfortunately, we're still in discussions with HTM at the moment. So we're just trying to get answers from them. Like I said before, this is new to HTM. It's not something that they've normally done before. This is not their usual work, and so it does require a little bit of extra work on their part to just to decide whether or not it is something that they would be looking to proceed with us. So as soon as I get any kind of information, you know, I'll be able to move on to the next steps. If it comes back and they say no, they're not able to do that, fine, we'll go on to the next step, which will be to go out to the tender, and get those prices through the open market.
Okay.
So on to proposals for the infrastructure. So currently then we're in making inquiries about the possibility of installing some temporary bus stops. These are usually bus stops that have some temporary stop signed on them, and there'll be like some advertising cases on there as well. They can be secured to the lamp columns at around the development, and that will be as per what's in the travel plan. So again, these slides can be shared so you can see that, and there'll be an opportunity for us to at least scope what people are thinking, what are they happy with it. I know there's nothing up at the moment, there's no infrastructure there currently, and I know it's on the travel plan to be you know, be installed. What tends to happen is people don't see it, and therefore it's never a problem. When we come to installing it, all of a sudden everybody's got a lot to say, and so we need to make sure that we give people the opportunity to start gradually seeing that come into force. If obviously somebody wants to raise a concern, that's great, we can see that, we can review it, we can go out and move it if we need to. It is just temporary, and therefore it can be picked up and moved the same day if that's what it needed to be. They'd be put in for a trial period, which would be determined over time, and then we'll look to make the permanent fixtures if we need to. So I think it's important that I give you a little bit of an update of SP25. So recently, proposals on the consultation, and this is to remove the entire budget for local bus and community transport. That equates to £1.7 million support for the network across Hampshire. A report is due to go to full cabinet in November of this year. If that gets approved, we will run then a local consultation on whatever the outcome there is. And that could just be either the entire budget to go, or it could just be that we need to make specific savings. Then the decision would go to exec member, and that would be delivered in June or July, with any changes coming into force from April 2025. Now, some may be aware that we've recently been awarded £7.2 million over 2 years of Bus Service Improvement Plan Plus, or BSIP Plus, as it's known. And the terms and conditions for that state that we cannot make any reduction to the existing bus network, or we do have to return that funding in its entirety. So that kind of leads me on to the final part, really, in that any service that we put into place here moving forward must and has to become financially viable, because it is unlikely that Hampshire will be able to support that in any capacity. So when that Section 106 funding runs out, the service would unfortunately cease to exist unless it was financially viable and sustainable for the operator. And I know I've talked on, and I do apologise, but that's it from me. So any questions?
Mike, that's really good. I just want to, before I open it up for questions, and guys, if you want to start putting your hands up with questions, I just want to remind the resources will exist to deliver that service. So going back to your red health warning, as it were, on your second slide, I think it was, Mike, Just bear that in mind. Don't go away thinking this is a done deal, as in it's going to happen as of May next year. So just bear that in mind. My biggest worry with this is and this is partly in case other people are watching this and it's going out in the public domain. This is not yet a defined service that will definitely happen. It may happen, but at the moment Mike is working through all that process. So with that in mind, questions. I have a question from Mike Slynn. Normally, Mike, we wouldn't do this, but as it's you, I'm going to let you cut in and ask a question. Thank you. I've also got a question from Johnny Morris to follow. So over to you, Mike, and then we'll move on to Johnny.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Mike. You've done a lot of work, and that's great news that you've done it. First question is, could we have a copy of the survey results, please? That's my first question.
I can't give you a copy of the survey results. I can give you this what we've got on here.
Mike, can you just mute? If you can mute while Mike is yeah.
Okay.
Are you muted?
Sorry about that. Thank you.
It's unfortunate you're both called Mike.
Yeah, I won't be able to give you the full breakdown of that. I can give you the slides here that we've got here that's got that information on. I can ask the question if I can give you the full survey results. I suspect the answer will be no, but I'm more than happy to take that question away and ask if you'd like.
Thank you. Can I carry on? Yes, if you could please do that. After all, as I understand it, this bus service is for residents, so I think it'd be reasonable for the residents, having contributed to the survey, to at least see a copy of the results. Thank you. That's the first point.
Mike, if I can cut in, but if you could just mute while I do this. Thank you. There's something going on with your setup that causes an echo. I think when we talk about survey results, it's kind of, there's a whole spectrum from nothing all the way to right down to individual responses. So there may be something. Mike has actually, in fact, shared a high-level summary of the results in the slides, which he has said he will share those. So I think one of the I'm coming from having done having a research background where we do underlying surveys and we then present results. So I think the challenge there will be working out what is a level that of survey results that Mike is allowed to provide, and what is just going down to two level of granularity that might expose some demographic issues that might get him into trouble with GDPR or something like that. So as I say, there are the survey results in very high level summary on the first or second slide. So the question then is, how deep do you want, are you asking for? And maybe that should be taken offline if you want to email us with that. But also the question I would have back is, what do you want to do with it? And if it's just share it with residents, and maybe what Mike's provided in the second slide is good enough, at least for that first thing, and maybe there's a level of depth that you can go a bit further. I'm not trying to shut that down. It's just we need to be really careful about what we mean by survey results. I'm gonna close my mic, and then you can open up your mic.
Can you hear me all right now?
Yep.
Good, thank you. Yes, okay. So I'm thinking about a survey report, not the individual results. So summarised report, setting out what you said verbally, but in more detail, would be very useful for us to share with residents so they understand the background. I mean, you gave us a lot of sort of high level information, but you didn't give us the detail behind that in terms of the responses. There are just a very few bullet points rather than more detail. In a survey report, one would expect to get rather more detail than that. So that's a request. The second really was on the choice of minibus rather than a conventional bus. Is that because the road condition is currently unsatisfactory for a bus service?
Sorry, Mike.
Sorry, Mike. Do you mind
muting?
I'll repeat that. Mike says, sure. Have you decided to go for a minibus service because the road condition in Kings Barton currently is unsatisfactory for a conventional bus? Is that why you have to go for a minibus?
Sorry, Mike.
Sorry, Mike. It was just.
Could you mute your mic again,
please?
There's a lot of feedback. Perfect, thank you. So, in answer to that, no, that's not necessarily the reason why. Although, as I discussed at the last forum, without the direct route through, it does make for a larger bus more difficult to get around, particularly if there's parking on street. You know, residents parking on the street, it could prove difficult for a bus to get through. Naturally, a conventional bus, if you will, is going to be more expensive than that of a minibus. So we're looking at the smaller option again, just trying to keep that cost to a minimum and sort of stretch that out as far as we possibly can until we're absolutely certain we've almost found the perfect mix, and then we can look to go with a larger vehicle, a conventional bus, if we deem that that's the most appropriate. What we don't want to do is be sending out a large vehicle and then finding out that actually there isn't the need for that, and so we can get away with a smaller vehicle. It's a smaller cost, and therefore we can keep it going longer.
Okay, that's clear.
Hopefully I can carry on. Thank you, Mike.
Mike, can I just pause you here? I've got Johnny Morris, and I'm getting your echo every time you leave your mic open. So can you close your mic for a minute, so I can allow Johnny to come in with his question, and then we'll see what other questions we've got. So that otherwise we'll have a whole string from one person. Keep your hand up, Mike Slynn, if you want to come back in with another question. Johnny, I think you can have the floor, and I'm not getting any echo, so I think we should be fine.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Mike. Regarding the bus service being put out to tender to a commercial bus company and operator, clearly any operator is going to be sort of putting in bids whether they think it's commercially viable, if it's profitable for them. And so would it be correct to say that we could find ourselves in a situation where no commercial operators are actually interested in taking it on at the current level? And if we do find ourselves in that situation, is there any way of providing a partial subsidy to make it more worthwhile for them?
Yeah, so obviously we've got the funding to provide it. So whatever the cost the operator deems they can provide that service for would be what we pay for that service. Obviously it's difficult we're unable to give them an indicative patronage of what we would expect. So, I think it's important that if we did go out to tender, we would only do that for a period of 1 year. So we would look to operate for 1 year for us to be able to gauge exactly what patronage is looking like. I think a year is a good opportunity. That said, I mean, we wouldn't sit back and just allow it to run for a year and then a year down the line assess it. I think we'd work quite closely with the operator. We'd get regular stats from them, so monthly stats probably, and we would probably meet with them maybe every 2, 4, possibly even 6 months down the line, just to see how things are progressing, and are they expecting to see the return that they always expected, or what they tendered on.
Can I add to that? So there is a potential situation that at the end of that year, the commercial operator could go, actually, it's not worth our while to keep this going without the money coming from you. We end up with no bus service at all.
Yes, that is always the risk. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, so there's no support available from Hampshire County Council, so we are only procuring for what we have under the Section 106, and this is what I've mentioned in the previous forum, is that we need to be mindful of that, and that if we put a service in now, whilst we're seeing, what those costs are looking like, we're tendering quite regular around the county, we're seeing those costs coming back, and we're seeing how expensive they are to operate. We don't want to be in a position where we are like that, where we're just paying for the service to operate, knowing that there's a strong possibility towards the end of that contractual period it doesn't become viable. So it is that, unfortunately, has to be one of the risks that we run when doing this tendering exercise, and that people need to be aware of.
So presumably, Mike, if I can just cut in with kind of my interpretation of what you're saying there is, assuming you can find someone willing to offer the service and to do it at what looks like a cost that is going to be potentially viable. Whether it is viable or not will depend on the level of patronage, because if it's heavily used, you'll have fares coming in that will reduce the amount of subsidy involved, whereas if it turns out that for much of the day it effectively is running empty, with very little fare revenue coming in, then the amount of subsidy becomes higher to keep it going. So at some point you have to say, you have to look at it and see, project forward and say, this is or it isn't going to meet the criteria of being a viable service, and at that point have to have a review as to whether you can continue to run that service with the risk that you end up running out of money too soon, or whether you make changes to that service. Is that essentially the right understanding of this?
Yeah, that's correct, Chair. So we would look to, that's why I think it's important that we keep reviewing that and work with that operator over the period of the year, to see, okay, we're not seeing much usage in the daytime, and through the middle of the day. Half hourly service is too extreme. We need to reduce that down. We can look at doing it for an hourly service, perhaps, so an off-peak service, or again, almost going the other way and removing the middle of the day if it's not being used. So it's really important that we keep a close eye on that service.
Yeah, but of course, bearing in mind that, and as Councillor Batho will know from his real life experience of being a bus driver, removing services in the middle of the day doesn't necessarily make it operationally any less costly, because you, as an operator, you still have people who are effectively not able to do their job. So it's not as simple as perhaps as it might, people might take from what you've just said. Assuming Councillor Morris, that answer has satisfied you, I'm going to revert back to Mike Slynn with a question, and then Mike, after I've got Councillor Porter has got a question or a point to make. So if you could just limit it to one question first, unless there's two very closely related, if you like, an initial question and a supplementary, and then we'll come to Councillor Porter. Thank you. And I'll mute my mic while you come on.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can hear me again. Right, Mike, thanks for that. Okay, so the next point really was, you were talking about the bus turning off Andover Road at the Jolly Farmer. The road network around there is very narrow. You certainly couldn't use a conventional bus, and it'd be pretty difficult for a minibus to turn and run through the narrow roads in that area. So I'm just wondering why you chose that route rather than what I imagine is the great majority, if not close to 100% of the residents who will want to get to the rail station and the city centre, which would mean the bus travelling all the way down Andover Road. And just a supplementary on that, if I may, you mentioned 6:30 to 8:30 as being the running time of the bus. Then later on, you talked about starting at 8 a.m. Perhaps you could just clarify whether I misheard you. Is it still 6:30, or are you actually starting at 8 o'clock in the morning? Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
If you can
mute your mic again.
And of course, we've got three mics. We've got Mike Slynn, Mike Griffin-Thorne, and we've got the ubiquitous mic that we're all using. Sorry.
Thanks for that, Mike.
Mike
yeah, so thank you, Chair. Yeah, so turning off of Andover Road. As I mentioned earlier, the actual route that we are proposing to take is still undetermined. We've not come to an agreement on what route that will take, and so I take your point on board there. I use it as a turning point. I'm not particularly familiar with that area of Winchester, so I do apologise. I would look into that, and I would look to see what is the most sensible route to travel from Kings Barton. Bearing in mind, we don't really want the service doubling back on itself if we can help it. So perhaps starting the opposite end and coming out towards the top end. So that's fine. Yes, you're correct. I made a referral there to 8 o'clock in the morning. I use that as an example, so I apologise. It would be 6:30 in the morning and would operate through till 8:30 of the evening.
Okay. And Mike, if I can just do a bit of checking on that. I think when you said the road just before the Jolly Farmer, I think you meant, is it Berwick Road or Avenue? I can never remember what name it is, which is the road that runs in front of Peter Simmons. Whereas I think Mike Slynn may have thought you meant the road, which is the next road down, which is very residential, very narrow, and runs into Owens Road, I think, which would be very unsuitable for any kind of bus. Well, maybe you might get a minibus down there, but so I think you meant Berwick Road.
That's correct.
That other road. Okay.
Yeah, Berwick Road.
Okay. So hopefully that has answered Mike Slynn's questions. Mike, I can see your hand still up. I'm going to hand over to Jackie, Councillor Porter, who's got her hand up. So Councillor Porter, over to you.
Thank you. The survey showed definitely a need for an early morning bus and then for a more regular bus, and that's what's come from this today. But will we be able to see and measure the impact on the current 86? Because a lot of people said they caught the 86. And will we be able to see that impact and watch that impact and react to it, as well as also react to the numbers on the bus?
Yeah, I don't think we'll have any issues with that. I think Stagecoach will be very forthcoming if all of a sudden their patronage starts dropping off of those services. I think when it comes to actually, you know, I use those timings, so 6:30 and the 8:30, they are the set timings, and I think they're not the set timings, they are the sort of timings that we surveyed on. We would look to get those probably between the 86 and 85 service. So almost along that route, I guess you would have a half-hourly service, whether that be the 86, 85, or whether that would be the Kings Barton service. We wouldn't, obviously, we don't want to cause any upset to Stagecoach, and we also legally we cannot be going out of our way to steal their passengers. So yeah, we'll be very mindful of that, and we will make sure that somehow it fits around and we don't cause any upset to Stagecoach.
Thank you. But it will be interesting to watch and see what happens.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely.
Thank you. Mike Slynn, I see you've still got your hand up. I don't know if that's an old hand or a new hand. I'm going to allow you to cut back in. And if you have, can you have one question? So conscious of time. And we've got one more item to cover before the end of the meeting. So,
sure.
Mike.
Sure, thank you very much, Chair. Yes, it was just a further clarification of that point about Berwick Road. That's a suitable road for a bus, sure, but it's not really going anywhere near the railway station or the city centre. So could you please look at that routing? It doesn't seem a good route to me. I would have thought that straight down Andover Road, stopping near the railway station would be more appropriate. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. If you could just take your mic. Good.
Thank
Mike,
you.
I don't know if Mike GT, I don't know if you wanted to comment on that.
Yeah, I can just very quickly add. The idea of the route, as I mentioned, was to serve the hospital, which showed some interest on the survey. I'm trying to think again of not doubling back. So the idea would be to sort of almost do a circle route, if you like. So it would go up Berwick, along Chilbolton, down Romsey Road to serve the hospital, down to the railway station, and then on into the city centre. Of course, the other way we can do it, yep, straight down Andover Road, probably up to the hospital first, turn on the hospital grounds, and then come back to the rail station. I was going to say the airport rail station, and then down on into the city centre. Again, just to be clear, the route is undetermined at this time, so we will have a conversation about it, and we'll make sure we're all in agreement that what we're saying is the best suitable route.
Yeah,
no problem.
I think, Mike, you are going to be grappling with almost conflicting demands. The demands of people who want to get to the station as quick as possible, and the demands of people who work at the hospital who want to get there as quick as possible, and whichever one ends up being the, if you like, the second main stop will end up, you know, having to take a bit longer. So I think that's a conflicting demands thing. So I've got one more member with a question. Councillor Lerney. Councillor Lerney, would you like to come in and ask your question? Thank you.
It's more of a comment than a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, my camera's stopped working all of a sudden. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly.
Right. Okay, good. Yes, it's just around this routing question, because as a member from an adjacent ward, clearly there are benefits to having additional buses running along our streets as well. So, and the routing is important, I think. As we know, the more people a bus runs past directly, the busier it will tend to be. You just have to look at our most used services to see that. So I think the route will be really important. And I also think we have to sometimes be a bit sceptical of where people say they want to be. Because often people will tell us they want to have a bus to the hospital when in fact they only go there maybe twice a year at most. Mm-hmm. So we do need to think about, are people wanting it to go to the hospital to work, or are they just saying it would be really nice to have a bus to the hospital even if I don't use it very often? I think Mike's right about thinking about getting people to places relatively quickly as much as possible. But yeah, if you had a bus running down Berwick to the hospital, then I think actually quite a few of my residents would be quite pleased about that as well.
Thank you, Councillor Lerney. Yeah, I think this business of bus operations is far more complicated than any of us probably thought it would be 6 months ago. So thank you for that. Now, I think Mike Griffin-Thorne, thank you very much for your presentation. I am just thinking I want to go back to almost your slide 2. I don't know if you want to just put it up. Just
this one?
That one there. Sorry, slide 4. It's important to recognise that to date we have not commissioned this service at this level, and the outcome will that we may provide the results we hope or expect. So anyway, just basically be aware that this is a proposal and it is not yet nailed down by any means. So I wouldn't want anyone to go away thinking this is going to definitely happen. But thank you for sharing that and being brave enough to actually put forward a proposal in a public domain. I think with that, Mike Griffin-Thorne, you are very welcome to stay for the last section of our meeting, but equally you've probably got a life to get back to and may want to drop off. All right,
I will.
Thank you.
Will leave. Thank you, Chair. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Okay, right. Where are we? I think we're getting to the very last section, which is an update from, from our City Council officers, and I've got first Steve Lincoln, who's going to update us on the open space transfer, perhaps add to any remarks you made earlier when we were talking about the landscaping and management plan, and then followed following Steve, we'll have Robert Green, who will provide a bit of a general update and cover off the questions, I think, in relation to City Council officer and the S106 report. So first, Steve, over to you. You with us? You're muted.
Yes, I am.
Moment.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Steve.
Yep. So very quick update from me, really. So the really positive news, although quick news, but very positive news, is that the transfer of the first bits of open space were completed last Friday from Carla to Headball Mervey Parish Council. So Headball Mervey are now the proud owners of the play area, phase 1B, and of the Manley Road open space. So obviously those now sit with the parish council, and our council's team will sort of continue to support them, work with them as they become used to sort of looking after those open spaces. That's the key update. It all followed on from obviously the council's cabinet approving that whole piece around the transfer of the open space to the parish council, which we discussed at the previous forum meeting. So those principles are now all agreed sort of across the life of the development. Hopefully those will be the first two of a number of transfers over time and over phasing that will happen. So that's a really positive step. In terms of the next pieces of open space, there's, I believe, the open space near the entrance to phase 1A is actually established, has completed its 12 months maintenance period, but I think there's the transfers just waiting while some discussions are ongoing with regards to the roundabout, I believe, with Hampshire County Council. But once that's all resolved, then I think that open space in theory is ready for transfer, subject to the legal people just doing their thing. And then beyond that one, it'll be a little while yet before any further open space would transfer. There's some further open space, including Wellhouse Woods, I think, has recently gone into the start of its 12-month maintenance period. So obviously that period needs to play out before we would then get around to sort of further and final inspections and eventual transfer. So yeah, first piece is transferred, and sort of more to follow in time. That's probably, that was the main bit in terms of the update. And just let me look back at my notes. I was just going to also mention, oh yeah, there were you just asked right at the start of the meeting for me to just touch on the issue from the previous minutes of the meeting. At the minutes of the previous meeting, and I have to say there's not really been any further action on that, so I will take that away to catch up with Viv outside of the meeting. Obviously what we agreed at the last meeting is that we would have conversations with Carla around that. To be honest, I left it that those conversations would come about as and when we got closer to that bits of land coming forward, but in context of a few other things we've discussed tonight, it would do us no harm to have a conversation early doors, just to sort of understand and get a bit of a bigger picture, so we know where we're heading for as the development continues. So we can tie that in with some of the conversation we'll have around sort of open space management as well. So I will speak to Viv outside of the meeting, and we'll just get our heads around where there's potential in terms of open spaces and community buildings, and sort of start putting some thoughts together.
That's brilliant.
I think that's it from me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, before we move on to Rob, then, any members have any questions that want to ask of Steve here at this point? Right, excuse me. Councillor Porter.
Yeah, sorry, it's taking a while. It seems to do funny things, and then it takes a while to click in. You mentioned about Naomi Arnold's replacement, and Steve was going to cover that off, or was it Rob going to cover it off?
I think that's Rob.
Going to cover.
Rob
Sorry,
is going to cover it off.
I apologise.
So Rob now knows the question. Okay, not seeing any further questions. So Steve, thank you very much for that and covering off that last item. Brilliant. And I noticed your use of a particular form of football language was very appropriate for that item, the reference to early doors. Thank you. Rob, your turn. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I'll go back first to the question from the Residents Association earlier, just regarding the pedestrian and cycle movement on Andover Road. So that's an action for me to take away. It's going to involve a discussion with a few Hampshire County Council officers as well, obviously, that aren't here this evening. So I'll take that away, have those discussions, and then I'll feed back to Mike, yourself, and everyone here as well. So that's an action for myself. In terms of my updates, I'll come on to the officer and the tracker at the end of this, but Viv mentioned it earlier. It's just a reminder that we do have the current application in for the residential parts of phase 2B. So that at the moment, that's in the process of going through internal and external consultees. We've had some feedback already, which again is available on the public file. So just a reminder that the statutory consultation for that ends on the 25th of October. There's orange notices around the site, neighbour letters and the like, so just a reminder of that date. Moving on to the dedicated senior planning officer for the post. Yes, obviously acknowledging that Naomi left is around 6 months ago now. Obviously since that time we've had a period of recruitment, and we're in the stage of contracts and notices. So Ruth will be joining us. We are near the end of that, so I'm anticipating that Ruth will be joining us in early November. So it was a positive update there, but no final date yet, but it will be at some point in early November. The month, every forum, I just update on the latest occupation figures that I get from the council tax service. So this was run last week, and we have 521 occupations, 3 of which currently unoccupied. And again, I'll do the same every forum just to update members on that. And that moves on to the section 106 tracker, which we've started on, made a lot of improvement. I'm just going to share my screen so I can talk you through the changes that we've made. I will zoom in. So it starts off with, we will provide links at the top here, which take anyone who wants to use it directly to the legal agreement, both to the Winchester one and also to the Hampshire County Council legal agreement. We'll always have the relevant paragraph here, which will link up. The previous tracker in this summary of requirements just used the legal text. Obviously, not everyone's a lawyer, so we've gone through and individually put that into plain English, and it always tells you what the requirement is and what it's hoping to achieve, and just a much simpler way. It tells us whether it's an obligation with Winchester or Hampshire. And we've also added on this category section, so every obligation has been categorised. So users in the future, if you're just there and you just want to know about the transport obligations or anything to do with education, you can select that, and it will get rid of everything you don't want to see. It then provides some further information just on when that obligation or expectation is required. Obviously a lot prior to commencements and prior to occupations, providing the latest status, so whether that's been completed, whether that financial contribution has been received, or the plan that's being requested, and then just some further information on just the latest update. You know, if it's not been provided yet, why hasn't it been? A lot of it's obvious, you know, we're not at 800 units yet, for example, so it's just separated that way. And it's also then, as I said, separated into Winchester and Hampshire requirements as well, so it goes into the Hampshire 106 and does exactly the same as well, so just setting out when it's required, and just the very latest update on when it can be expected. And that is all from me, Chair.
Thank you, Rob. I guess the question, we've obviously just glimpsed it there, so we're not able to absorb it, but I guess my question is going to be, how do we find this tracker? Is it just for members, in the public domain, etc., etc.?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. No, all the information on there, it's simply taken from the 106, which is public. So my intention is that we can add on to the forum agenda moving forward, and also the dedicated web page for Kings Barton, which we continue to work on as a one-stop shop for all information, but we can add it there as well. Obviously, it's a moving document. We'll keep updating it, and we'll make sure that those links are updated as well.
Okay. Are you able to circulate, so we all know exactly which page you're talking about? You can circulate it to members so that we all know exactly what that page is and where we can then go and look and find it. Thank you.
Yep, certainly. Yeah, there's a bit of work to do on it, a bit of research with Hampshire as well. But yeah, as soon as we're finalised and happy, we can do that.
Understood. All right. Thank you. Any questions for Rob? Okay. I'm conscious it does take a few seconds for a hand to actually show up on my screen. It must be not moving at the speed of light at the moment. So, Councillor Porter.
I just want to say thank you. That looks a great improvement and a really comprehensive document. And the fact that we're making it public will be really appreciated by lots of people, I'm sure. So thank you very much indeed. That's a real improvement.
Thank you for that. Yes, I agree. I know Rob's been working on it over part of the summer, trying to get some improved clarity and transparency. Any further questions before we end that section? It's obviously good news, Rob, that we will have Ruth joining us soon. With respect to the occupation figures, I think you said 521 occupations, but 3 not occupied. I think what you mean is presumably they are registered as occupied, but they may not actually be occupied. Is it something like that, or?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Right. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions coming in, so I think that means we are done, and I think we're at the end of our agenda. So if I could thank officers for coming along tonight, preparing material. Thank Viv and Ian, I think you might still be here, Ian, for attending and giving us an update. And of course, all members for joining us this evening and participating with good questions. And if I could also thank Mike Slynn as chair of the Kings Barton Residents Association for joining us with lots of good questions and points to be made on your report.